for those of you who may not have known, we didn't record last month's meeting, so if you need that information again, you'll have to reach out to Wade to put it back together for you. It looks like we've got people from 5 agencies. Oh, there we go. 6 agencies, so hopefully a couple more will hop on here in the next couple of minutes, but let's go ahead and get started. I've just got the agenda up for today's meeting. The main topic of the meeting today is that Ian Spangenberg from Utah Community Action is going to show us some of the things that they've been doing using the MHEA tool to help track their inventory and measure costs. Before he gets into that, I've just got a few, our normal housekeeping things to go through. The first one on the agenda is just training opportunities, and we've talked about both of these a lot. Are there any others out there that you guys have come across that this group may not be aware of? If there are, drop them in the chat or let me know and we'll pass them along to the group. But yeah, we encourage you guys to take advantage of those and any other training opportunities that you feel will help improve your skills. I didn't really have any old business items, a couple of new business items. The first one is I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware that there was a guideline update. Brad issued, we call them a UWPN, which is Utah Weatherization Program Notice. And it was effective November 24th. If you would like to know how to find that, I'll show you quickly. If you just go to the IWTC website, and it's not the Utah WAP resources, it's right next to it, is just the Utah Weatherization Program Notices. And if you'll click on that, and then they're just listed in sequential order from oldest to newest. So if you want to find the newest one, you just scroll all the way to the bottom. So right here is the program notice 2017 for this year, and then it's number 8, and it was just a list of changes to the guidelines. And if you'll scroll through the pages, is this the right one? Maybe it's not. Oh, this is the pig. Let me back up. Maybe it's not currently listed here. If it's not, yeah, it's not. It will be in the near future. We'll be posted right here. But that's right. I looked at this last week and realized that was not here yet. But anyway, there's a list of program changes. Let me think about how to show you what they are. Well, if you guys are not familiar with the changes, it's just a handful of minor changes to the guidelines. The guidelines themselves have already been updated. So if you get in here now and open the new guidelines, all the changes are in there. But if you'd like to look through the list of changes, make sure that you talk with your coordinator or go back to your inbox and actually read the document that Brad sent out. Does anybody have any questions or concerns on those changes that they've seen so far? All right. Oh yeah, we're looking. I would be looking for number 11, and it looks like it hasn't been posted there yet. So we'll get that posted hopefully sometime this week. And so if you don't have it, then you can find it where I was just showing you. The next item is just our monthly production report. So I've got a slide here with our production numbers through the end of November. And thank you guys to everybody who's put in that extra effort and all of your hard work. It looks like we did meet the goal for November. We had a projected goal, or a goal to have 35 units completed, and across the whole program we did get 35 units. We are still behind. We still have to make up for the other months when we didn't meet the goal, but at least for the month of November we are on track. But it looks like we're we still need about 40 more units to get us, right up to where we need to be for the year. But so keep pushing, keep working hard, but also thank you for your efforts. We really appreciate them, and they don't go unnoticed at all. Does anybody have any questions on production or any other information that might be helpful there? Okay, and then the only other thing I had for you guys this morning before I hand it off to Ian is that just to let you guys know, next month we're going to have Chris Hansen, who works for the SHPO office. He's going to join us via webinar here, and he will just show us, I guess there's a new SHPO online submission process, and he'll kind of walk us through that process, and he'll be available to answer any questions. So if you have questions and need his help immediately, feel free to reach out to him. But if it is something you could wait until January, he'll be available for our whole group, and we can kind of receive some training and have an opportunity to answer or ask any questions then. So anyway, anything else we need to discuss before we get into the main topic for today? All right, well, I'm going to switch the screen over to Ian and go from there.
Can you still hear me, Matt?
I can, yes.
Okay.
So you should get there you go. I can see your screen now, Ian.
Okay, perfect. So Matt asked me to go through some of the things that we've been trying to implement here at our agency. As I go through this, there's a whole bunch of different areas in NEAT where things need to be added for this to work. So I'm going to try to cover each one. I'll probably jump around a little bit, but if anybody has questions or concerns while we're going through this, just stop me and we'll make sure it's clear. The first thing is and we have been doing this login with some of our users now, but we're going to implement it across the board. So if you haven't done that, I would probably recommend it, especially if you have more than one auditor, because you can set up user rights where users can't delete data. They can only add or edit. So that's what I just did, is logged in. But what we're going to cover is how we've started using our inventory to actually do job costing in NEAT. We do have a separate inventory system that we still use. The thing that we found that we needed was some more data on the actual work that was done on a job, and this has helped us actually achieve that. So what I want to do first is show you guys what this looks like when it's completed, so that as we're working back and I'm showing you how to get to this point, you'll understand why we're doing it. So one of the features in NEAT is once you do job costing, you can actually run this client completion report that's got a whole bunch of useful information. It'll include status throughout the audit, status, when the client applied, all that stuff can be recorded here, and you can actually see that under these, you've got audit here, you got work orders, and you can see when stuff was done in that. What the nice thing is that once you go through and cost out a job, once you have all your materials in there, it will show you what each thing cost, including labor. And then it will actually break it down with your BTUs saved. It'll show you the actual SIR after you put in your correct materials and costs. So this helps us get a better idea of whether or not our initial run of the audit was accurate. So you can see here that most of the stuff will still have a 1.0, and it'll give you your actual SIR rather than an estimate. And then the other nice thing for us is we're using this cost summary. So when we go and do the BWR and web grants, we can actually use these numbers here to submit with our funding sources. So what I'm going to show you guys is how to get materials in there, and then also how to set up things like this where you've got the funding sources in there. So the next step, I guess we'll just start with the agency. So if we, let me close this. So everybody's familiar, when you come into NEAT, you've got these tabs here, and these are basically, the agency is everything that's associated with you and your auditors, field crew, and contractors. And then you've got the client information. So in order for this to work, you've got to come in here and you've got to set up some of these parameters. With us, we switched databases last year, so we have to make sure you're on the right one. And then you can see here that we've got contacts. So what we've done is we've actually put in all of our employees. Our field staff are listed as crew. Our auditors are in there as auditors. And then we've also got contractors. One of the things that we've done that's actually helped us when we go to create work orders is we've added all of the measures that we're doing down at the bottom. So the WO says it's a work order, and then we've got air sealing, fans, HVAC. And we're doing this because when we go and print work orders out, we're actually printing out separate ones for different crews that are going to be doing the work, which is why we've got these listed like they are here. The other thing you need to do is in your cost center. This is where you're going to tell it which grants you're actually going to be costing the measure to. So in here we've got all of the different grants we're using. Plus, like when we have the DOE health and safety, we do that because we want to know how much health and safety to report on the BWR. And then we've got some other funding that we include in here as well. So these all need to be set up, and you can go in here and you're basically going to create new ones when you have a new contract, or if you don't have anything in there now, you'll just have to go in and create them for the contracts you do have in the measures. And so that's pretty much it in agency. So once you have all that set up, you can start looking at the materials. So there's two different libraries that you need to work with here. You're going to have your setup library and your supply library, and both of these are going to have different things that are added to them. Well, let's start with the supply library. So what we've done is, if you go into your supply library, you've got all these different categories. We don't use all of them. We're basically putting everything into one tab here under the construction material and hardware. And the reason why we've done this is so that we can simplify the uploading of all of our materials. If we were to split all this out, then it creates kind of a pain to try to go back and make sure that the costs on them are correct and that they're updated. When they're all in one, you can actually come in here and do your subform data sheet, and you can just see everything listed. So you can see your costs, the description of it. If you were going to use this to track who you're buying it from, who your manufacturer is, all that data can actually be included in here. Plus, there's a field for comments so that you can put special instructions, if it's a special order item, sizing, whatever you need, you can include that in the comments. But as you can see, it's all alphabetized. When we've done ours, we're using the name of the product, and then we have our inventory item number that's included at the end of it, which is helpful for us to make sure that it's the right product. So after you get everything in here, and you're probably looking at this list saying, holy crap, that's a lot of data entry. In a second, I'm going to show you a way that you can actually download the data onto spreadsheets and then quickly upload it back in. But again, all of the stuff that we're using is under this one tab, which has been helpful because after you get that in there, and if you go over to your setup library and start looking at your user-defined measures, so the way you pick these, and I don't know if any of you guys are actually using any of this now, but all you would do is you would click the type. So like I said, all of our stuff's under the construction material and hardware. So if you pick that, and then you go over here and you go to copy from your supply library, it gives you the option to pick anything in your list of items. The only other one of the types that we do use is labor. We have two different labor sources. And right now I'm not in our live database, so if any changes I make won't affect that. But if we go to labor, then we click the drop down. Actually, in this one, we don't have any labor included. But if there was, you'd pick it, and then it would update. And as you guys are probably running your audits, you're seeing that you're able to go in there and make some changes to these materials, which is another nice feature in this. And you can also, like, if you have to order something that's the same name, but it might be a different size, like a 60,000 furnace going to an 80,000, and your cost might be a little different, you can actually do some on-the-fly updating of your costs, which has been helpful for us. And then the other thing you probably may or may not use is these drop downs here. They're not required, but this is actually how you can go in there and start costing things to the right categories. So when you're looking at measure type, when we turn in a BWR, we have different areas that we're reporting the cost to. So as you create user-defined measures, you can actually go in there and assign it as a default so that every time you do it, you don't have to reassign it. Or right before you go and create work orders, you can assign it there, and I'll show you that in just a second. And then you also, this is where you would pick the cost center that you're going to be charging your items to. And then this is how it generates the report at the end. So the setup library, it takes a little bit of time, but once it's set up, it's really a lot easier for the auditors. It's easier to control like where things are getting charged to make sure that they're accurate. And then the more user-defined measures you predetermine, the less time it takes when you're actually generating audits, because you're just going in there and you're picking the correct one with all of your materials already included with it. What we've done with the materials is we've actually put in anything that may be needed for that measure. So like for our ash rate bands, let me pull one up here. Actually, we'll go to the furnace because that's got a lot of materials. So with our furnace, we've got concentric kits, we've got Mavents, and not all of those get used on the job, but what we do is go in there and just take it off. We know that it's not going to get used, but it helps us make sure we don't miss materials. So that's been helpful. The other thing that we're using this for is to actually pick the materials. So when a crew gets a work order, they get the work order and they get a bin with the materials that are all listed here, pre-pulled for them. So that's your setup library. And like I said, you're probably thinking, well, this is going to take forever to get all of this uploaded. So for the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through how to actually create a spreadsheet that you can add all of the materials to, and then you can upload it back in. Okay, so the way you do that is we've got this thing called data link, and everybody's probably familiar with this because it's how you connect to your database. So there's different fields in here. Normally you're dealing with this section right here, your back-end database. What we're going to do right now is work with this import-export data. So in here you've got two options. You can either work directly with another Access database, which is the program that this is written in, or you can do it indirectly with text files. Since we're going to be using spreadsheets, we're going to be using the indirect with text files. So we're going to click that, and then you click on Go. So in here you've got two options. You can either bring data back into your database through the import, or we're going to actually do an export of the data so that we can work on these spreadsheets. So what I normally do is I will create a folder on my desktop. I did one earlier, but I'll delete this one. I've got it open. Hold on. So I'm going to clear this out, and I'll actually walk through the entire process of doing this. I'll just make a new folder. So go in here, and you just go to New, and then you're going to do a new folder. It's called the Neat Data Dump. Okay, now that we've got that made, we're going to go back in here to the screen with the import-export. You've got several different options here. You can do just clients, you can do errors, and you can also do your entire database, which is the data dump. So that's the one we're going to pick. When you do that, it'll automatically click this zip the exported file. Normally I don't zip these. They're not that big, so it doesn't really matter if it's a zipped file. If you're going to try to email it to somebody, you would probably want to zip that, but don't worry about it for right now. You also don't want to have a password in there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go browse and find the folder that I just created. So on my desktop, I'll go in and I'll find that Neat Data Dump folder. I'll click OK. And then once you've got that selected, you hit this Do Export. What it does is it's going through every table in Neat right now, and it's creating a CSV file for it. So once it's done, it'll tell you that the export was successful. As you can see, each one of these is going through different records. It'll actually tell you if there's errors exporting anything. Just a couple more seconds. All right, so when it gets done, it will tell you that it's finished. So now if you go to your desktop and go to the folder that was just created, which is right here, you've got a whole bunch of different CSV files. So in here, it basically takes all of the tables that you've been working with in Neat and it creates a spreadsheet. So if we go and we look at the let's setup library or the supply library, for example. So if I open this, this shows me the 4 different supply libraries that are created in Neat for us, and it gives it an ID. This ID is important because when you go and you create and update your materials, you're going to need to know what this is. So ours, the important one is this one right here. This is the database we're currently working with. So when you come in here, note that because you're going to have to copy it into your material library. And you can tell it's the right one because these are all how it's labeled in Neat. So why that supply library is important is because you scroll down in here and you go to your supply tables. You've got your supply library for your CFLs, your cooling, your doors, your heating, your labor, and then we've got this one called Table Supply Miscellaneous. This one's nice because it actually has a couple of the different types. So like health and safety is included in this miscellaneous. So if you open up that one, you're going to come in here and you're going to see all of your materials listed. And the supply ID is what I was telling you should pay attention to because this 798-45-0043 is our current supply library that we're working with. So if you were to come in here and you have your materials, say you've got another inventory program or you've got them on a spreadsheet already, all you would need to do is come into this spreadsheet right here. And if you scroll down, you see all those materials are listed. You've got your quantity, you've got your unit of measure. And then, I don't know if you noticed at the top, it actually has the supply material ID. And that's the number that it gets when it gets imported into Neat. So we're also looking at this 11 here. This 11 is a code that Neat uses. So if you look up here, it's called the miscellaneous type ID. So in the miscellaneous types, there's 3 different ones. 11 is your construction materials and hardware. So that's the one that we're using for all of our materials. 13, if you see any of those listed, is the health and safety tab. And then there's one here that's 100, which is the other tab you can see in Neat. So what that means is in your supply library, this construction materials and hardware is that number 11. This health and safety right here is the number 13. And this other is your code 100, you can see. So what I'm going to do is just show you how you can actually, if you scroll to the bottom, we're going to upload one of these so you can see how easy this is. So here, this is the name of the material. We're just going to say and then our unit of measure, we're going to say is each. Now, when you do this, make sure that it matches what Neat already has listed. You can't do unique ones because it won't accept it. And then we're going to say that it is $100. So you know the supply library that you're going to be using, so we need to just copy this. So what you've got is you've got your supply library, you've got your name. We need to put this for 11. you've got your unit of measure, and you've got your dollar amount. I'll show you how this works in all three tabs. I'm going to copy. So the first one I did was the construction material and hardware. And like I said, number 13 would be our health and safety. And then number 100 is our other tab. When you're uploading, you don't get to assign the material ID. Neat will do that automatically, so you don't need anything in here for the upload. All you're going to do is after you're finished putting in your materials, you're going to go in and say save. And you need to save it as a CSV file, which it is right now. So when you do save, it's going to ask you if you're sure that you want to save it as that, and you're going to say yes. And we're going to close this out. It's going to ask you again, are you sure you want to save it as a CSV? You're going to say save. It'll tell you that you may lose some formatting, but there really is no formatting in here that can be lost. So click yes. This one we didn't do anything with, so I'm not going to save it. So if you had gone in there, you can copy and paste all of your materials, all of your costs, and then you can actually come back in and do the reverse of the export and do an import for that data. So the import's actually done up here, and you get to pick exactly which tables you're going to put in there. So again, come in here, you're going to go to your browse. You're going to go find that on your desktop. And the table that we were working with was the 3 table supply miscellaneous. We're going to go down here and find it. And we're going to click open. And then you've got a couple of different options on the upload. You can either replace any existing records, you can update existing records and not delete anything, or you can just show a list of the clients, which is a test only. It'll tell you if it works or not. We're going to do the update with no delete. And if you're just doing materials, you can actually uncheck this. Since I'm only updating one CSV file, it won't matter. So I'm going to do the do import. Of course, it's going to give me an error, so we're going to go back in and see why. Make sure the materials are in there. We'll just match these. Maybe that was our issue. Okay, and then we're going to hit save. And we will go back in and we'll try it again. So again, if you go back through the steps, you can pick your folder again. I'm going to make sure we have the right one. It is not liking it. Normally you don't have these kinds of issues. I'm not sure why it's giving me the primary key error. Well, we'll pretend like it worked on this. It could have been the copy that I made for my desktop. But anyway, so you put all your materials in there and you do the upload, and it's worked the other times we've done it. That's how we update our materials, and that's how we got them in there to begin with. It's a lot quicker if you're just copying and pasting, because if not, then you're gonna have to go in and create each material, which is super time consuming, and it's a lot easier to just do the import. And if any of you are gonna try to do the import, I can walk you through it. Like I said, normally there's not an issue. And if you do run into issues like this, we've actually been working with Oak Ridge National Laboratories on a couple of errors we were getting, and they were super helpful on walking us through how to correct them and why the error was popping up. This could be one of those examples where you just send an email and they would help you figure it out. So we'll pretend like the update worked. Our materials are in there. So now I'm going to kind of walk you through, once you have your materials, what the benefit is of actually using it to cost your job and then to get that completion report. So I'm going to go into one of the clients that we've recently completed and show you what these reports look like and what the actual materials from the work order look like when they're all copied over. So this is a client that we just turned in last month. We've got two different audits here. I was actually running one with utility costs to see if it would still have the same paybacks. And if you guys have ever used that, you should. It's interesting to try because it actually doesn't have the same kind of payback when you actually put utility bill usage in there. So in our measures, you can go in there and you can see what we've got that we're going to create work orders from. And you've also got these two other categories. And this is where in the beginning when we were talking about your agency and your contractors and that work order information, this is where you would pick that. So what happens in the work orders is if you pick air sealing here, and then I go down here and I pick water heaters, and then I leave the rest of these blank, it's going to actually create 3 work orders, and I'll show you that here in a second. And you can also default your cost center before you even create the work order. So your auditors can go in here and they can pick which funding source is paying for it. This is how we drive our inventory. So when we pull materials out of inventory, we have to know in the work order what cost center we were using so that we would cost it correctly when we're transferring those materials. So you can either pick these here, or when we go to create the work order here in a second, you're going to be able to pick them there as well. So again, the contractor is nice because you can actually create more than one work order by picking these. So since I have air sealing here, that's 1 work order. Water heater would be 2 work orders, and anything that would be blank or not have anything filled out would be the 3rd. So I'm going to save the previously generated ones because I've got completion reports I'm going to show you, but I'm just going to kind of quickly show you what happens here. So now I've got 4 work orders associated with it. And those work orders are actually going to be named according to what we just called them. So now when we go in here, we'll pull up those. So you can see we just created these ones right here. We've got the water heater, we've got the air sealing, and then we've got this one here. This is the one that was all blanks. So if I go into the water heater, it's only going to have the 1 measure, which is nice. So this is normally what your work order would look like if you're going to give it to your crew. In here, you can go in here and change what this is. So if it's doors or windows, if it's the building insulation, any of that stuff that you're going to be reporting on a BWR, you would predetermine that here. And then you can also change your cost center. So if you decide that the default that you had listed isn't what you're going to be using, you can change that and it won't affect anything. So this is how you would normally give it to a crew. We'll go here and just do the print preview so you can see that this is ready for the crew to take out and actually fill in their quantities. So what we're doing is giving this to our field staff, They go out there, they get the materials that we pulled for them, because we're going to pull whatever it says on here. And then they'll fill this in. And when they bring it back, we actually will go in from their notes. And on this particular client, since we just closed it out, we do have one that shows us everything that's been done. So what we do after you're finished is you've got a couple of different columns here. You've got your estimated total, your estimated quantities, and you've also got this button here to copy. So if the crew went out there and used everything that we told them to use, you can actually just hit this copy button here, and it will copy the quantities into the actual totals. So if a material quantity changed or if a cost changed, you can adjust that here. And down at the bottom, what it's going to do is it's going to recalculate your SIR. So I'm going to pull up one that actually would have an SIR. So here we've got air sealing, and it looks like our initial was actually less than a 1.0, and that's probably just because of the dollar amount didn't get adjusted correctly on the one of the materials. But then it'll actually show you your actual and your actual SIR, so it'll recalculate this. And then we've got comments that have been added by crews, and you can see here that all of our materials we've gone through and we've actually copied over the correct cost. This has been nice because when we're done with the job, we're leaving the crew notes and their work orders in the file, but then we're going in and we're actually reprinting. So instead of it just being blank, this is actually showing us exactly what did get used and what our actual costs were. And like I said, the materials that we didn't use will get zeroed out or eliminated from this list. We're taking the crew notes and we're copying in their detail on it. So each measure's actually got a new total. So when we send out the final inspector, they can take this out and they can actually see the quantities and then make sure those materials were at the job. So any of the crew notes added, all of that good stuff. And then once this is done, you can actually go into this client now. And there's this thing called the completion report. So you can go in and preview that. And this just copied over everything from the work orders we completed. And again, it'll show us here what the funding source was, what the measure name is, and then each one of them is broken down into the economics. So it's showing you exactly how much energy was saved, either by your heating or your cooling, or if it's a baseload item. And then it'll give you actual SIRs. So what this has done, when you did your category type and you get to pick base load or insulation, it's telling you that your base load measures, and then listing anything that was included in your base load, and it's giving you a total cost and a total annual savings. It does that for each different type. So the building insulation, it will show you each different component and then how much was saved and your actual SIR. This will also show you if your SIR goes below 1.0. Again, when we do an audit, it's an estimate, and so sometimes that may or may not happen. This would be a good place to look if it was happening all the time to figure out if your costs are actually correct. But again, it's going to show you exactly what the total cost was for this. The other nice thing is it's breaking out your labor and your materials. So as most of you know, when we report on a BWR, we're only reporting the materials. We're not reporting the labor. But with this report, we have both of those readily available, so we can see, how much we're spending on average for a home. And this has been nice. I think it was nice for the state when they came and monitored, because it makes it easier to read. It's clearly defining each measure and how much we spent in our SIR on it. And then it also helps us when we go to fill out the BWR. We just match up the funding sources and the different types, and then we're able to report and it'll match this. There's a lot of other features available in here, and once you start actually getting in, and if you did start using it, you'll run across those. I think it's too much to go over in one sitting, but does anybody have any questions about any of this so far? Cool. Does anybody think that they'll use this? Even better.
Yeah, how much you charge to come down here for a week and set it up for us?
I think we could make that happen. I really do. I think the good thing about it, if everybody was using this, is we could all help each other with like the itemized materials, because we can share those back and forth from database to database. I mean, is it something that you're really looking at implementing now?
Oh, in the future. I'm not sure how soon, but yeah, we got to do something.
Okay. I mean, the reason why we started using this is because we don't have a really good database besides Neat. And then as we were looking at like how we could, collect this data, it became more clear that Neat actually has everything built in. I mean, granted, it's not the best platform, but it does have a lot of features. So, I mean, some of the stuff we could actually do it over the phone and, sharing screens, kind of like what we're doing now, and I think we could get you guys up and running.
Sounds good.
Okay. As far as importing the materials, again, we got the air today, but I'll figure out why. And if you guys had a list of your materials and your costs, I could give you the spreadsheet, and then all you'd have to do is import it.
Yeah, I'm sure we could do that pretty easy.
Then you could start from there. Because you have to actually get your materials in there before you can start creating all of your itemized or your user-defined measures, because you need to, have the materials there to be able to pick them. But as far as the inventory, that's all I was planning on going over, unless anybody has any specific questions about, where things are, how to do it. There's one last thing we can look at. If you guys don't have an inventory system, Neat does allow you to actually put in your quantities. So, like, for example, down here you've got your inventory. You can see how many that we've used. We don't have any purchased, but if we go in here, so let me clear this one. Well, actually, this one I did earlier. So if you were to purchase this and you have an invoice for it, you can go in here and put in your quantity that you received. You have to do the clear. That's what tells us that you've received it, and you can just put your invoice. And then when you close this, it will update your quantity. And it's doing the use based on what's been actually costed out. So when you go and you finish and close out a job, it's going to actually take those quantities out of your inventory. If you see these ones that are still not completely, don't show any actuals yet, it's because we haven't actually used them. Once we do and once we cost them, then it'll show those quantities. But it's saying that we're anticipating that we're going to use some of these here.
So when you have your HVAC measure where it's it has a whole bunch of things that you might possibly use, but you won't use them all, it doesn't actually show them missing from your inventory until you've closed the job out?
Exactly. It'll show them as you're going to need them, but it doesn't do actuals until you click that copy button or you fill in the actual quantity used.
Gotcha.
You can see, so if you go into your subform data sheet on your materials, you can see everything that's available and how many are used. Since we don't use it to actually do our ins and outs on our inventory, we haven't used that, but it is available. And I think if you didn't have a ton of materials or a ton of crews taking stuff, that this would definitely work. The other nice thing is you can come in here and, like I said, you can do your manufacturer, your model number, and your supplier, so you know who you buy it from. And to get your supplier in there, that would be over in the agency under your contacts. Suppliers are actually one of the contacts that you can create. So if you're going to buy everything from Johnstone for your HVAC, you can make Johnstone your supplier, and then you can actually put in their part number. So if you're ordering, it would be easier for office staff. They wouldn't have to know exactly what they were ordering as long as they had the correct part number in there. So there is some pretty basic features that are nice.
Awesome.
But if there's other questions, that's all I've got.
Ian, can you pull up the report again? I don't remember.
The completion report?
Yeah, the completion report.
Yeah.
So as Ian mentioned, this was really, really helpful when we came out and did our monitoring. But that's not the goal. The goal is not just to make it easier for us. But for all the coordinators out there that are listening, your auditors are becoming very good at identifying the funding source. And if your auditors can clearly identify the funding source and you had all of this set up, your auditors could finish this stuff up so that you have this report. And then the other nice thing that I've noticed as I've gone through Utah Community Action's files is anytime I have a question about, well, something changed between the audit and what happened out there in the field, this report has made it so that Utah Community Action doesn't have to go back and rerun the audit a million times because they're documenting what changed right here. So it's no longer necessary for them to rerun a bunch of stuff unless it changes the SIR or really reshuffles the deck. And in fact, Ian and I had a conversation last week where I was trying to wrap my mind around why they weren't doing something a certain way, and it's because what they're doing is all documented here and it's not reshuffling the deck, so they don't have that issue anymore. And then for all of you, if you can recall when you sat in my How the Audit Affects Me class, and we went through just those foundational principles of the audit, one of the foundational principles is that each measure must be cost effective and each package of measures must be cost effective. And this really closes the loop on that. And especially it shows very specifically how we are costing out all of our health and safety stuff. And anyway, this reporting and this process just makes it dots so many more I's and crosses so many more T's than we can do manually. I would really encourage you guys to take a good look at this. I realize Ian he's done a fantastic job showing this, but I think for a lot of us you click through a bunch of stuff very, very quickly. I've got this recorded. I'll put this out to you guys. You can watch it and kind of go back and watch the parts that you may have missed some things, but please consider implementing this. I think your agencies will be better for it. It'll help out with a lot of things. So anyway, that's my plug on it. Does anybody have any questions for Ian at this time? All right, and then if you know somebody at your agency was not here today and didn't watch this, encourage them to watch it later because it was very, very valuable and I think it can help a lot of people. So Ian, thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. And
No problem.
so
I think Jess had a question.
go ahead.
I think you typed it in.
Oh, Jesse did?
I was just saying for smaller agencies who don't have full-time even office staff or even a full-time inventory guy, how much time does this take to set up and then to keep it running accurately with all your costs and everything?
So to get it set up, you're probably someone's going to have to probably dedicate a full week to it. So probably 40 hours to get everything in there. And then if you did like quarterly updates on your materials, it would probably every time you had to update maybe, an hour going through your costs. And you can just do that off of your most recent invoices. I mean, with us, our costs don't change that much, and our inventory system uses an average cost. So we're just spot checking the numbers, and then twice a year we're actually going in and making changes as needed. So, in December we'll make a change. We'll look through our costs and then update if anything changed significantly. But if you're only talking a few dollars, it's not the end of the world if that didn't get updated, as long as you were doing it annually.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Ian, do you have any recommendations on if you were a smaller agency, who would be best suited to familiarize themselves with this and do that setup?
Probably the auditors, because they're the ones dealing with the different screens. I mean, yeah, once you get it set up, it's pretty easy to maintain. It's just getting those spreadsheets updated and copied in.
Gotcha. All right. Well, if I appreciate Ian's offered up his services as well. So if you have more questions, reach out to him. Ian, if you start getting a lot of questions, or if the group just would like more in-depth training, let's all talk and figure out a good way to provide that training so that you don't get inundated with stuff. But
Sure. And also, I don't know how many of you guys remember or were around, but Steve Fox, like 2009 or 10, at the training center, he came in and we all went through the active measures and made sure that what we needed was turned on and that our costs were also included. It might be a good idea if we have another kind of training like that where everybody brings in their own databases and then you update.
okay.
Because then we can ask questions, we can make sure, I'm sure some of you guys have some good user-defined measures that would be nice to share.
Yeah, we could set something like that up. Maybe I wonder if we did something like that in like May or June, so that we were setting up for the next year or something.
I think it's a great idea.
Okay. I'll see if I can calendar something, and we'll have to think through whether it probably worked best having everybody in the same room.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you're going to run into errors like with today and trying to upload that spreadsheet. You're going to run into things like that where it's going to be something simple to fix, but a lot of times that might be the one thing that keeps you from implementing something like this.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've run into that same error and in the past, but I know it just takes a few minutes and you can work through it, but
yeah.
But you do run into some of those. So awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ian. Anybody have anything else before we end? All right. Well, you guys have a great day.
No.
Everyone.
Thanks.